that's why Left to Suffer thinks that I'm the devil.
What's up, everybody? Richard from TrueShot, the TrueShot guest spot, another episode. Today we got on Jeff Menig. Who's Jeff Menig? You're probably wondering. He is co-owner of FeaturedX, and he's also the manager for two bands that you may be aware of, Left to Suffer and the Gloom in the Corner. Extremely intelligent guy. I was very happy to talk to him. I personally learned a lot from him as somebody in a band. So if you're somebody who is into the business side of, the metalcore, deathcore sphere, we touch on that as it pertains to not only his bands, but his past bands, including bands like Sworn In. But also, as I mentioned, Jeff is also part owner of the site FeaturedX, which you can find your boy on there, if you want to feature on your song. Anyway, he co-owns that with Ryan Tuck O'Leary from Fit for a King, so we talked about that as well. So if you really want some interesting, in my opinion, interesting, I might talk too much, but if you want some interesting insight from a guy who's been around the block for a little bit, this is the podcast for you. Here it is. This is Jeff Menig, co-owner of FeaturedX and the manager for both Left to Suffer and the... Jeff Menig, what's up, man? I know that we just talked for a few seconds here while you're teaching me how to use this new Zoom doohickey, but what's going on, man?
Oh, just another day in paradise, as they say, or whatever.
Yeah.
Just ending my day. Just got home from work a little bit ago, so.
Yeah, so you're down in Atlanta, correct?
Correct. Yep, I've been down in Atlanta for like 3, maybe 4 years now.
What's it like with COVID down there? Is it just kind of do whatever the hell you want, or they got some kind of conditions? I know that it's close to Florida where they pretend that this thing isn't even real. So what's it like over there in Georgia?
Well, it's interesting. The city of Atlanta reacts to things way differently than the state of Georgia. So I live in the city itself. So in the city, there's definitely precautions everywhere pretty much in place. I would say most people are doing a pretty good job about following it. So it seems. There are still some EDM and hip hop clubs that are running full steam ahead like nothing's going on.
Fun.
But besides that, yeah, I don't really know what it's like outside of the city. I don't go out there too often, but I'm sure it's a shit show.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. It's just so crazy how just like one city or like a town can be different from the next town. There's no cohesion anywhere. It's just kind of different depending on where you are. I don't know, man. That's a topic for another day, though. But anyways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's very diverse in Georgia. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you manage Left to Suffer and Gloom in the Corner, and you're a co-founder of FeaturedX. So I got all those credentials correct?
Those are all correct. I am also currently the marketing director at the Masquerade here in Atlanta.
Okay, yeah. So the venue down there, like the
correct.
Is that kind of like the main metal venue down there? That's the one that I always hear about whenever somebody goes to Georgia. That's where they go.
Yeah, I would say anything from the metal to hardcore, punk, emo, metalcore, Warped Tour, Mayhem Festival spheres, and all the adjacent things, they pretty much come to us because it's actually 3 venues, not just one. So there's a 300 cap venue, cool. A 550 cap venue, and a 1500 cap venue, and they all share a communal courtyard basically, where fans from every show that's happening that night can all bring their drinks outside and go smoke and hang out with people from the other shows. And there's usually food trucks and stuff going on and whatnot. So it's pretty cool.
That's interesting. Yeah, that sounds like a venue kind of near me. Kind of near me. I'm in New Hampshire. This one's in Connecticut, the Webster. They have kind of like a 300 cap area, and then they have a bigger stage. So interesting. Okay.
Plus the merch area that connects the two.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I've been there. I've been there a bunch.
Yeah, I've only been there once. I haven't actually played there, but I went to go see Spite there, and it was let's just say there was no social distancing going on. It was like a week before everything got shut down, so it's like I wonder what happened there, in the aftermath of all that. But so how long have you been managing both Gloom in the Corner and Left to Suffer at this point now?
Well, I started managing Left to Suffer before they were Left to Suffer. I basically helped launch that band from scratch.
Yeah.
The Gloom in the Corner, uh, I don't really know how long it's been. This year's been obviously weird because they're in Australia and
Right.
COVID and all that stuff. But, pretty much this whole year I've been working with them. We're just kind of mostly with them. It's a lot of prep work for what the next thing is gonna be, since they've kind of established a nice little base themselves. Whereas Left to Suffer, we're 100% full steam ahead because we just haven't stopped this whole year.
Right. Yeah, and I apologize in advance. My cat is a demon. He's very loud. He meows all the time, and I can't
I love it.
I can't control him. But yeah, I
The
was gonna.
guys in Left to Suffer call me the devil, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was super interesting when I figured out, because obviously I started talking to you, I don't know what it was, probably a month ago at this point now, just on Facebook and stuff. And I saw that you managed Left to Suffer, who was right there in Georgia, Atlanta with you.
Yep.
And then you got the Gloom in the Corner, who's very on the opposite end of Georgia and Atlanta. They're, very far away. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic. How would you say that that's kind of different in terms of, obviously, besides the elephant in the room, that it's 6,000 miles away or whatever, but
Definitely, it's a lot different because I can be hands-on almost day in and day out with Left to Suffer. I met them because Taylor was a regular at the Masquerade,
oh,
and
cool.
I don't. So you're from New Hampshire. I'm originally from Poughkeepsie, New York.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah, so
you
I
must
used
know
to so I used to do all the shows at the Chance, the Loft, and Club
so you must know the
Crannel,
guys in
and
If I Were You very well.
oh my goodness, very well, since they were in high school.
Yeah, I know that
Yeah,
they're
for
regulars
sure.
over at the Chance, so that's why I figured you probably knew who they were pretty well.
Oh yeah, I booked them. I was still booking them when I stopped booking there in like 2013, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they were. I think they had just transitioned from their previous band into If I Were You,
Oh,
because their
wow.
previous band, they were in a band called, sorry Randy, they were in a band called Nania, who is,
Oh, wow.
they were, if not my biggest local metalcore band, at least one of the top three.
Hmm.
And then I don't know exactly, I don't remember, it was so long ago, I don't remember exactly what happened. And then they became If I Were You. And I think they played one or two shows for me under that name. And then I ended up moving and stopped booking there. So kind of lost
Yeah,
touch with
because
them. But yeah,
if I Were You's been around for like 45 years at this point now, so
correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they've been around for a long time. But I didn't mean to cut you off there. So yeah, so the main difference is you're more hands on, obviously, with Left to Suffer day in and day out because they're right there. So, but then also the Gloom in the Corner, yeah, they're in Australia, and that time difference is probably kind of a pain in the ass, I would
It's
assume.
brutal.
Yeah,
It is so brutal. It's not, it's just I still haven't gotten used to it yet. So
right.
I either have to talk to them at between like 5 and 7 p.m. or like 8 to 9 a.m. And there's like kind of no in between. Everything else has to be Facebook Messenger or email or
Yeah.
text or whatever. But because we like to do as many, because I mean, until COVID happened, I'm with Left to Suffer a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so, like, and because of that, I can really steer the ship 100% and just kind of put my foot on the gas
Right.
because I don't, I crack the whip with them more than anyone will ever understand.
Okay, so that actually kind of segues into the point that I wanted, because I think a lot of people may not fully understand like what a manager does. Are they like, oh, do they book the shows? Well, no, that's kind of more so a booking agent's kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure you obviously having that connection with the Masquerade, you obviously know kind of probably how to do that kind of thing. But so, what
For sure.
exactly does a manager do on a day in day out basis for a band?
I'm pretty certain that I don't work like any other, like most other managers.
Yeah.
Just not, I mean, not that I don't have any experience of being in a band with a manager. So I just kind of, the first band I started managing was Sworn in
Mm.
2012, and I just had been a concert promoter and like festival promoter and social media promoter since I was like 17 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
I just used basically all the knowledge that I had accumulated from creating these events and learning from trial and error of how to do them correctly and how to properly market and promote something, and how to create excitement on the internet was something
Mm.
that I learned just how to do. And it just, what I did translated very well to doing it for a band. And I basically then just kind of deconstructed what I did with Sworn In when I was just doing it off the cuff, and kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Deconstructed it or whatever, and
Mm.
then kind of just laid out a map of like, okay, this is exactly what we're gonna do. Like I had the first year mapped out before we even made
Oh,
the Facebook
wow.
page.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it was literally like, okay, well, this is what we have to work with to start. This is what we need to do to get going. And then I was like, this is what we're going to be doing the next year. And we literally hit the mark on, they couldn't believe it, where I was like, this is what's going to happen. Then this is what's going to happen. And then this is what's going to happen. And everything just kind of happened. And I was just like, okay, so the system that I did with Sworn In and Villains and Gift Giver and Widow and Varials at the very beginning of their career works with, it still works a few years later, you know what I mean? So yeah, so I kind of I think, I don't know how most managers really work, but I'm kind of just thinking about 10 years down the road already,
Mhm.
and then working backwards and just figuring out the points of, this is when we need to be kind of doing everything. They kind of do a lot of the creative stuff. I help with some of the branding and uh, stuff like that, and the some of the overarching branding and marketing and stuff. But I'm really just there to make sure that they're doing what they need to do.
Yeah, because
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah.
and and I've done it before and it worked, so I'm pretty confident in the path that we're on. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of like, it's interesting because a lot of, I've heard like through, through the grapevine or whatever, a bunch of other local bands around Atlanta
Mm.
thinking that we were dumping thousands and thousands of dollars into marketing, and or like I must be doing some sort of trickery or shit like that. And it's just
Buying our
like,
Spotify listeners.
yeah, no, it's like literally like, no, it's that for almost 2 years now, I haven't let them have a day off. Like they they have their normal day jobs, then they do band stuff, and then they go home with their girlfriends and eat dinner and go to bed. Like they don't have lives. And
Right.
people don't, like, they've literally sacrificed everything else pretty much so that they can at least a little bit every day be
Yeah.
working on stuff, because we have so much shit going on that it needs to be that way. Um, yeah, so it's just kind of that, just making sure that they have an an equal mindset of, this needs to be a 10-year long journey with, we have to be doing shit every day with the urgency that if we're not doing it today, it won't happen in 10 years.
Right. Because I think, believe it or not, and I mean this very sarcastically, believe it or not, musicians, they're the most prepared people. They just have everything figured out. They know exactly what to. But I think with Left to Suffer, though, just from observing them online, I've never talked to Taylor personally or anything like that. But these seem like guys that are probably easier to work with because I think that they want it. Is that fair to say?
They want it more than anyone that I've worked with before.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
and you've mentioned
bar,
quite a few big bands in the scene. So that's
yeah, but no, bar none, Left to Suffer, they want it and they're willing to do whatever to get it. And we're not doing anything weird or shady. It's just they're willing to put in that grind. I hate that fucking word, but
See,
yeah, they're just willing to do it. And it's just like, no, it's like we have to be. It's just that's the game. It's like until you have brand awareness that is big enough where that you can let off the gas,
right.
you can't ever let off the gas. Like Bring Me the Horizon can disappear for a year, not post anything anywhere, and come back and they'll be huge.
Oh yeah.
Normal until you're like over that tipping point, bands don't realize that if you slow down at all, your momentum drops, and it's just so much harder to get it going a second time. So it
Yeah.
has to be consistent, consistent, consistent. And then eventually, all of that stuff gets compounded, and then boom, load drops. And the 9 months of legwork that we did day in and day out led to being able to help elevating that song and making it pop.
Right.
And then it's about, and this is something that bands struggle with all the time, is knowing how and when to, like, when something happens, how do you leverage that to spin it into something else?
Gotcha.
And most bands that I talk to just have no idea of anything of that. But most of them, after they play a really good show or drop a song or album or whatever, will celebrate it for a week or two on the internet with their friends, and then they're like, "What now? What?" And it's like you need
Yeah.
to have it needs to already be kind of mapped out. It's like I have the next uh, about 15 months planned for Left to Suffer at this point.
Damn. Yeah, that's quite the roadmap to have. And yeah, what you were saying there about, bands that drop off, that's why I look at a lot of the bands, there's some bands even around me, but just in general, the bands that, kind of, quote unquote, took the pandemic off. And I'm like, that is the dumbest
Dumbest thing.
shit you can do. Like literally the worst time to take time off.
Well, literally, so I think it was March 13th, I think was the date that we had like an all hands on deck meeting at the Masquerade. And it was like, okay, we're working from home until further notice. We've just went through like a week and a half of canceling or postponing like the next 6 weeks worth of shows. It was insane. And with 3 venues, it was like March and April, we were packed. We do like 800 shows a year. So, uh, but literally, so the initial plan from Jump with Left to Suffer was we're doing singles, single, 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 single. Eventually, we'll then get to like your 1 year anniversary. We'll repackage those 6 singles with 2 new songs and put it out as A Year of Suffering. Like
Boom.
this was
Yep.
last February, we had this figured out. So we had their first headlining show on April 4th, which would have been the 1 year anniversary of their first show ever.
Okay.
And that was going to be the release of A Year of Suffering originally back in the April thing. So then the next thing you know, we have to cancel all of that stuff. So it's like, okay, we're gonna push back the album indefinitely because who knows? This might be done in a month, and then I can just grab a date at the venue in May, and then we'll do it then. You know what I mean? Whatever. And then eventually, after a couple of weeks, I was just like, I think that this is gonna last longer than we think, and I think no, no, no. I know that 99% of bands are just going to spin their wheels idle. So
Yeah.
we need to go twice as hard starting now because I basically was like, everyone is going to be reacting like they just got hit with the spiky shell in Mario Kart. And they're waiting to get their calibration back. And they're just going to put the controller down and sit and wait until they get their footing back till they start going. I'm like, we need to drive fucking through that because if we can, this is gonna turn into like a caution lap situation in a car race,
Yeah,
where then when the world opens back up, green flag, we're gonna be in the position where we're passing motherfuckers. And
exactly.
when tours, I'm fully expecting when tours to start in September and October, that we're gonna be opening for a Mirror or Chelsea Grin or something like that. We're gonna completely skip the mid-level tiering uh, part of their career completely.
Yeah, because especially a lot of the bigger bands they took the time off, so it allows for a band like like a Left to Suffer or Gloom in the Corner that are on the uppity up to
Yep.
really because it's weird because like there's like that mid level of bands that when this is all said and done, some bands might, unfortunately, at this point it hasn't really happened that much, but they might not be operational anymore at that point.
I've had a lot of conversations with different friends in bigger touring bands who are pretty concerned for some of the smaller bands, like
Yeah.
will it be financially feasible at all to continue for some of them? We're not really sure.
Yeah.
And like our scene was already struggling for legit opening bands on tours.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's like I think of a lot of bands off the top of my head that I'm like, man, are these bands gonna still be doing it when this is up? Because like you said, I mean, it's not like September's gonna hit and they're gonna be all right, 100% capacity, go ahead. It's gonna be probably a slow burn to get probably full capacity, but unless I don't know when the vaccines come in and all that, but
I,
yeah.
I think I personally have a timeline that America will be reopened 4th of July weekend.
You think okay? You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, which then would lead to local and regional shows and probably some festivals over the summer, with then announcing tours end of July, August for the fall.
Yeah, that's so funny because like I was telling you on Facebook a few weeks ago, we have a festival date booked for September. I'm like, hey guys, imagine that. That's our first show back after a year or so off.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I think, and it's like the whole restart approach to it. It's like everyone's going to be yearning for shows so much that
Yeah.
every show's going to do well at first.
Yeah, well, that, and I think a lot of people, there's so much material that's come out because I mean I know that Loathe that with from Left to Suffer that came out obviously. I know that they played a show playing that, and they did a live stream as well. But also the Gloom in the Corner with their latest EP. There's so much material that people probably haven't yet heard that they're like, man, I can't wait to hear Loathe live. I got to hear this song live.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because by the time, if my timeline does stick, they're going to have a whole new EP out. Spoiler alert, they're going to have a whole new EP out of 6 songs before then,
Mhm.
which I think are going to demolish everything that they've done. So I was literally like, some half of the songs on that A Year of Suffering, you probably don't have to play anymore already.
Probably right, and it's yeah. I mean, I gotta say, personally, my relationship with Left to Suffer, because obviously, as you know, we do the YouTube channel where we react to different bands, and that was one band, man, that like I don't know what took us so long to eventually get around to it, but I heard it all the time. They're like Left to Suffer, Loathe. You gotta check this song out, and usually when that happens, like when people are that persistent over months and months of telling us we have to check it out, it's usually not a bad track, and that song was sick.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy because when they recorded it and sent it to me, I thought it was great. Wasn't really expecting it to do. We were already doing pretty well for only being a band for 9 months, but that really took off. It was crazy.
Well, I think what it is that it's like that. It's like that down-tuned sort of sworn-in instrumental feel, but with Taylor's like very like just deathcore style vocals, and that's like a combination that you don't really hear too often. You hear like an Alpha Wolf who kind of has like not like a similar instrumental style, but in
Right.
that vein, but like kind of a more hardcore style yelling scream vocal. But then with this, it's like the two come together, and Taylor's sick, and then um his name is escaping me from the feature. I know he's in Bro Job, Jacob Wallace. uh
Yep.
yeah, yeah, then he comes in at the end, and it's just like, what the frig.
And that was just an accident too. The
It,
way that feature happened, they were on
really.
tour and needed a place to stay, I think, or something. And I think him and Taylor might have been, internet friends already, or if not, somebody said, "Oh, hey, Jacob, they're looking for a place to stay," and so they were just hanging out, and they were like, "Oh, you want to hear our new song?" And they were just like, "Oh, you want to fucking throw down some vocals on it?" And he was just like, "Sure," and he just did it right then and there, and
He
it was
threw
just
down
kind of
some
like a on.
vocals, all right. It sounded like
Yeah.
Satan himself spawned out of the dude. I could have, like, when that because obviously you're watching the video, and when he came on, I was just like, damn, like that was next level, especially with those type of instrumentals. It was just a really cool blend. Because as you saw, I checked out the full EP, and I really liked it, and it was cool to like see, like, even within that, the A Year of Suffering from Burden, which I was kind of like, I remember that you had watched. I was kind of like, it's cool, but like it's so different from the other stuff. And then you said that was the first song that they wrote.
It was a,
Yeah.
yeah, that was Taylor, after, like I said earlier, Taylor was a regular at the Masquerade, and after, we got chummy at some shows or whatever, he just slid in my DMs one day and was just like, "Hey, so we have a new song. We think it's good, and we don't want to fuck it up. Would you check it? Would you check it out?" And I was just like, "Yeah, sure, man, whatever." And he sent it to me, and I was just like, "Okay, yeah, this could be something." Like,
Mhm.
what the? Okay, like, I've seen your band. They were called Lost at Last at the time.
Right.
It's like, okay, I've seen your band before. Like, I didn't know you could write songs like this or whatever. And the next night, him and Pete, one of the guitarists, were at a show, and we ran into each other, and I was like, "Oh, let's go back to my office and chit chat." And they were like, "Oh, well, you want to hear another one? We just got a second new one back."
Oh,
So
wow.
they, so I was like, "There's another one? Fuck yeah, give it to me." And so they sent it to me, and I played it, on my speakers at my office, the Masquerade, and it turned out to be the song that we called "Lost at Last." And
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was just like, "Yeah, this is so much better than the first one. Holy fuck! Like, what the hell?" And they already had "Just for Now" as well. Um, so it was just like, them figuring out, like, they're like, "Well, we want some songs kind of like this and some songs kind of like that, so we can figure out what we want to do and whatnot." And I was just like, "Okay, you have to start from scratch. That's the way to do it." And
How did they take that when you told them that?
well, that was at the end of our very first full band meeting. And by the end, it was like probably a 3 or 4 hour meeting. And by the end of it, I had convinced them to change their band name and to
Wow.
start from scratch.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
They literally laid that first meeting with like, "Okay, we're changing the band name, starting from scratch. And
so
we're just gonna do what this guy tells us to do."
So yeah, you have some pretty good negotiating power there. It seems that's pretty impressive. First band meeting, not even didn't even take a few of them. They were just like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just great. Yeah, it was wonderful.
So you mentioned that they're going to be releasing an EP. Spoiler alert! And
Yep.
obviously, I know that Gloom in the Corner is coming off an EP. So we were actually, it was funny because I posted I like to put things out on Facebook and then just let people just go at each other, and I find it
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
great.
entertaining. It's entertaining, yeah, But I we were talking about the album kind of being I think it's dead, or very close to dying, or dead, which it is.
Well, I have I guess,
A
and
cavern.
I and
Okay.
I and I agreed with you. I said it was so dead that the carcass has already been eaten by maggots. And you know, and I don't and then there was a bunch of people that were commenting that, they love the album and the story of it and all that stuff. And I 100% get that. And I didn't really mean that just that putting out albums is dead. The album cycle is dead.
Yes. Yeah. I would
So
agree
that
with that. Yeah.
because it's just like, I feel like everyone complicates things way too much. And it's like, if you just take a step back and, over the last 3 years, in my opinion, probably like Lil Baby, Da Baby, and Juice World were the three artists who have blown up and taken over the world the most, or the
Mhm.
United States or whatever, or
Yeah.
three of the ones. And it's like, if you look at how they did that, they released three full length albums, each of them in a span of 18 months,
Yep.
with singles and featuring on other people's shit in between as well.
Yes.
And it's like, if you look at, so when I moved to Atlanta, I had never I'd been in the hip hop scene a little bit in Poughkeepsie with like the local people, but I had never done a ton of hip hop shows or really done a ton of it. I was just like with like some of like the low like the local promoters and stuff like that. But
Right.
after I moved to Atlanta, I was like, I want to get more
Very
into
popular.
it and meet more people and really dive into that scene and see what it's all about. And it's like, they get it, man. They get every aspect of it.
Yeah.
And just from, and it's only been like the past 2 years where I've been making friends in that space and hanging out. Like, I like go to studios and like hang out and like go to listening parties and
Oh,
all
cool.
sorts of crazy stuff. But, um, yeah, it's just so crazy in 2 years span, just being like, man, they have social media and they have the Spotify game and they have the whole music industry figured out. And bands just still have this romantic vision of
Yeah.
playing in some shitty bar with three people, but then some guy in a suit smoking a cigarette's walking past and stops dead in his tracks because they're playing the chorus of their best song and throws the cigarette down and goes into the shitty club and is like, I'm gonna make you famous.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
all they have to do. And it's like, man, they really just don't get it. But you know, the hip hop community, it's like they understand that you're fighting for people's attention
Right.
and that people's attention is being pulled in literally a million directions nowadays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I meant by like the album is dead is like these bands who are just, especially just starting out, geez, like
Right.
if Left to Suffer just went and dropped an album from jump and didn't have anything to follow up with, like that's just like the biggest mistake that you can do. And
Right.
like, and then that's kind of why I brought up the whole supply and demand thing. And this is just across so many aspects of bands in our scene where they don't understand. Like, I'll see a band show up to their first show with a whole merch spread and inventory and setup. And I'm like, okay, that looks cool, right? But it's your first show. So unless all of your friends and family are already going to be buying stuff to support you, it's like you don't have the demand for the product yet.
Right.
Why are you going to create product before you have that demand? So literally, I told Left to Suffer, we're not having merch at your first show. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
All
they
you
were
need.
like,
Yeah.
really? And they were like, really? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, because I want to build that up so then we haven't done merch, for the first 6 months of the band. And now there's like people that are like, what the fuck? Why don't you print merch? And it's like,
Right.
when you start getting that reaction, then you know that there's some demand there and then you can gauge it from that. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's why we took the approach of, okay, we're going to do 6 singles and then the 8 song re-release thing, and then we're
Right.
going to see where we're at. Because it's like, have you seen that GIF that I've shared before, of the Family Guy meme of them trying to capture James Woods?
No, I haven't. No.
Do you watch that show at
Oh
all?
yeah, of course.
So there's like one episode where they're trying to, I don't know why, catch him or something. And how they end up doing it is leaving like a super long trail of pieces of candy.
Oh, a piece of candy.
Of
Ooh, a piece of
ooh, piece of candy.
candy.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Yeah,
And it's like a 5 minute bit of the
right,
episode, right? Like they really dragged it out to show how long of a trail that they had to leave for him or whatever, and eventually to catch him in a box. But that's kind of like if you just dump the whole bag of candy out in front of somebody, they could just scoop it up and walk away.
right,
So you have to feed people little by little and basically have them follow you down this path that you're taking, that you're trying to forge of telling your story and making your art and stuff. And it's like when you it's like and then you as you grow, as your brand awareness grows, the length that you can spread each piece of candy out can increase because they're a little bit more addicted to the candy or the sugar or whatever you want to say. You know what I mean?
right,
So
right,
it's like at first you really have to be like, here, get here. Like I want your attention, like a little kid tugging on the parent's shorts at Thanksgiving or whatever, or Chinese water torture. I got a million analogies, but it's just like you have to be super consistent until you have their undivided attention, which
yeah,
is when they're actually a fan. You know what I
right,
mean? Which is like so many bands are just caught up in the vanity metrics of monthly listeners, where
right.
they don't understand that monthly listeners aren't necessarily fans.
Exactly, and I think like so a few things there. As far as the hip hop community goes, I totally agree with you. Like I think that they have it down. I will say that like the one obviously clear difference is that I think generally speaking, it's probably a little bit easier to get music out as a rapper as opposed to a metal band, just because
1,000,000% easier. I
yeah,
can't argue with that,
right.
but
But I do
them's
agree with
just
you on
that
everything else.
that that but that's
Yeah,
just the
that's just
fact of the
it.
matter.
Right,
So tough shit. You know what I
right,
mean? Like if bands want to continue to let EDM and hip hop dominate them, then so be it. But how to combat them is that you have to put out more. You have to work more. You have to
right,
do more.
right.
Period. End of story. And like that's just all there is to it.
Well,
Uh,
they don't want to put out more because the big mean Spotify man told them to do that too. So they can't. They got to rebel against the big bad Spotify man.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
I don't know. Left to Suffer hasn't had to put a single penny of personal money into the band since Loath dropped.
Yeah. And that's great because I mean, like that's why I think with with my band, it's interesting because we're also like on the internet creating the content, but we have Twitch and Patreon and all these different avenues that we haven't really
Mm-hmm.
had to pay any money out of pocket for a little while now. I mean, we've been able to pay for music videos off of Patreon, and it's crazy in that regard. So like that's why when we first
Yeah,
started, I
and
was
imagine if you keep it up where it would be in 5 years from now.
exactly, and I was just like,
Yeah,
like we got to do something that makes us stand out. And at first, I was kind of like, oh, do I really want to be known as like the reaction band? And then I was like, who gives a shit? As long as somebody
shit.
knows who I am, I don't care.
It's better to do something cheesy or whatever, or
Right.
than to not do anything at all. Like,
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when we first did it, it was like, oh, aren't you afraid that if a band, watches it and you didn't like the song that they would? I'm like, man, like, listen, if a band is gonna be that butthurt over two dudes on the internet, then they're children. I mean, that's what it really
correct.
that's really what it really
Yeah.
boils down to. But yeah, man, no. So what without giving away, because I know that you're working on some stuff for a Patreon,
Yep.
different vlogs, stuff like that. So just kind of, I guess, a little bit of a teaser in terms of like, if you had a band, so say a band, they're starting from scratch today, and you're like, okay, I'm going to manage you today. And then they have this idea, for an EP or so. What is like
Okay.
kind of like your you're kind of like what you hear that and you're like, okay, this is what I think we should do, or this is what I know we should do. This is how we should release it, blah, 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 all that. Just like kind of scratching the surface.
Well, if they want to release an EP, first it's like, okay, well, how many songs is it? Is there a story to it? All of
Mm.
that stuff. Then it's like, okay, obviously we have to have the conversation on if it's done already or if they still have to record it.
Yeah, you're right, right.
But then I'm going to ask, what do you have after that? That would be my next thing. Um, because if they didn't have anything ready yet, then I would be like, okay, so we're going to drop singles
Hmm.
until you know, you know, maybe 4 singles, then the EP, or 3 singles, then the EP, because then it will give us that 3 or 4 month time where it's like we're actively dropping and promoting things while then simultaneously creating the next shit that we're going to be promoting once this cycle is done.
Right.
So that's kind of like that's how I approached it with Left to Suffer. So it's just like, well, they didn't care how they release stuff. They were just like, we don't want to fuck this up. This is what we want to do. So you just tell us what to do and we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so it's literally been the best experience out of any band I've worked with by far. It's insane.
And it's,
But
oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
but yeah, it's for me. I have these 2 analogies that I came up with a long time ago with when I was doing the Sworn In stuff, where it's like, you know, there's a trampoline analogy where you drop something on a trampoline like a bowling ball, and the bigger the bowling ball, the higher the first bounce or whatever.
Right.
But if you don't do something, like how you can steal a jump, like and spring your friend up in the air or whatever, like if you're not working with that momentum and stealing a jump to then launch the bowling ball way higher,
Right.
eventually it's just going to come to a sit still. That's just how it works.
Right.
And simultaneously, as a kid, me and my cousins always played this game at my grandparents' house on holidays where we would just try and keep a balloon up in the air in the living room. And if the balloon hit the ground, we all died or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, when you drop anything, and I'll just use Spotify as the example because that's what everyone kind of goes towards. It's like, okay, you have your artist for Spotify login. You can watch the graph, you know what I mean, and up and down of your daily streams,
Right.
daily users, and your followers, and all of that stuff. So literally every day, it usually updates around 3 p.m. Eastern time, I think. It varies every day, but
Yeah.
every day I log on and I look, and I use it in my head. I have this combination of, okay, we drop we drop Burden, we get that huge first bounce when it drops. Then we need to go into the balloon mode where now we need to be doing as much stuff as possible
Yes.
to stabilize that momentum so it doesn't come all the way back down.
Right.
So then once it's stabilized, we can start the next thing.
Right.
So then, literally a lot of, it's like for those first 6 singles, it wasn't predetermined when we were going to drop the songs. I'm always watching their stats and their graphs and their engagement on everything. And I'm just so in tune with it that it's like, okay, it's starting to work. I can see that we're starting to go lower than
Right.
our base, what I want our base to be. So I know that right now is the time for action, whether that's running a new ad to try to get some new fans to get them to get a little bump up again to keep us even, or whether it's, okay, let's start the rollout for the next single because we're starting to drop and we need to spring back up again. So if like I'm going to take screenshots of their daily listeners and plays and all that stuff, and it literally looks like a staircase.
Yeah, and that's the goal. I mean, because like we dropped the song back in October, and then obviously at this point now it's starting to go down, and my bandmate's like, it's starting to go. I'm like, got it. We got to put another song out, and then we got to put another one
Yeah.
after that, and then another one, and it doesn't stop. And then I think because the guys in my band, I'll bury them a little bit. It's okay. We'll bury them a little bit here on the
Are you a
podcast.
wrestling fan?
I am. Yeah.
Me
I am.
too.
Are
Okay.
you? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because and real quick to go super
Yeah.
off topic now, back to the hip hop thing. I have discovered because I've been a wrestling nerd my whole life
Yeah.
that literally the most successful rappers do what the most successful wrestlers do. They tune into a piece of their own personality
And
and
they
then they
jack it
crank
up.
it up
Yep.
to a cartoonish comic book level, and they just create this character for themselves that they get to play
Right.
exactly like Stone Cold Steve Austin of The Rock. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
It's literally exactly the same. It's hilarious. But
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say because when I first, first from these guys, they're a little bit older, so they're definitely from, that album era. Like when you used
Yep.
to go to Best Buy and pick up the record, and that was the only way you could listen to it over and over in the car for 6 months or whatever. They've since come down off of that, but I said to them, I was like, guys, take away the romantic factor of somebody 10 years from now saying, oh man, I really loved that TrueShot record, blah, blah, blah. Outside of that, what the hell's the point of this? Like, what's the point of an album outside of, a legacy or a Spotify discography? Like, just like the stupid little things.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Uh,
yeah, it's just, again, it's like until your band reaches a certain level, I always try and keep the supply on just under the demand. And if the
right,
supply, if you always have them wanting a little bit more, then you'll get to the point where you can give them more. Like, we're gonna do, we did 6 singles in the A Year of Suffering thing. Now we're gonna do 2 singles and a 6-song EP because I'm aware of their numbers and then how the demand is, and I just know that now that's the next step to take. But we're
right.
not gonna then automatically go. We're gonna go back to singles for a little bit. Like we're not
Yeah.
gonna just, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just about
Self-awareness.
it's about watching your shit, and it's like when you see the ball starting to drop, put out more music.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of it. And so I'm not really against albums. I'm just against not dropping stuff more often. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you could drop an album like Little Baby or Juice World, like three 18-track albums in 18 months,
Right.
then great, do that. But if you can't do that, if you can only write 12 songs in a year, then do 7 or 8 singles, then release the record with
Right.
just 3 or 4 new songs. You know what I mean?
Right.
And extend it. And yeah, I don't know. People,
And
I have a hard time.
yeah.
It's like I feel like I have such a grasp on it. But I never went to school or
Right.
anything. I
Yeah.
just started booking shows in high school and never stopped.
Right.
And so it's like I have a hard time sometimes explaining it, but yeah, it's just like you have to just be continuous and know when to trigger things and when to pounce on things and how to get the most out of everything that you do. Like how to turn a music video into not just a music, like okay, yeah, that's one huge piece of content, but then you can turn that music video into 5,000 other pieces of micro content. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
how to recycle and reuse it. Because, the 2 reasons why I got Left to Suffer to start from scratch was one, I thought their band name sucked and it didn't fit their band at all. But beyond that, and not to say that Left to Suffer is a great band name, because they were like, that's what we want to be called. And I'm like, sure, whatever.
My guitar player confused them with Make Them Suffer all the time.
Yeah, that was the first thing that I brought up, and they were like, "We don't care. This is what we want to be." And I'm like, "Sure, whatever. It at least fits what you guys sound like." So,
Right.
because a name is just a name,
It's
I
just a
think
name.
people overthink it, but it's like, okay, Lost at Last. I thought you guys were gonna sound like Counterparts, like
Yeah. Sounds like
you know what I mean,
some ambient something. Yeah.
or something. Yeah, yeah. But the biggest reason it was like, okay, you guys, they had been around a year or two or something like that, and it's like, okay, cool, you had 3,000 likes on Facebook, but they did what every other band in our scene around, at least in Atlanta, does, and it's like they only post At most, they were posting at most twice a week, and that's like maybe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like most of the bands around here post once a week, twice or three times in a 2 week span, and they have this notion about over posting and not wanting to something like they just and I'm just like, okay, so this is how the algorithm works. The pages with the most engagement get put up in the organic reach more. So if you're not swinging the bat and trying to put the ball into the outfield, you can't score.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like to think that you can post once a month on your Facebook page and then you're not having all 500 of your likes see it and you're getting Zuckerberged and blaming it on the algorithm, a word that none of these people understand. And it's just like, no, it's just like, if you, the robot inside of Facebook, if you've only posted 4 times this month and we've posted 40 times, it doesn't take that into consideration. It just takes into consideration the total engagement of the page.
Yeah, I mean, it's to simply put it, they want you to stay on the platform. So
Yeah,
whoever is helping them keep people on Facebook longer, they're
they
like,
get rewarded.
"Here you go.
Yeah,
Here's a piece of candy. Here's a
and
piece of candy."
right, and it's and because like the 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 big the dropping a song, a music video, announcing a tour, stuff like that is like your bigger things, right? So
Right.
all these bands do that. They'll announce their shows, or here's our link to our music video, and they post it once and they don't realize that that's not enough. You know what I mean? But
Right.
you have to have those bigger key things to help springboard up, but you need that micro day in and day out content to again keep you situated and not letting the balloon drop all the way back down. And that's it was just like, okay, we're going to start you from scratch, because from the day that we post on your Facebook and your Instagram, we're posting every single day forever.
Yeah.
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 They
And
were like, and for the first like 6 months, I had one of them going live. Like, so there's 5 dudes in the band. So 5 nights of the week, we were going live on Facebook or Instagram too. So we were posting 7 times a week, going live 5 times a week, plus getting them, Taylor was easy because he's the social butterfly, but getting, the rest of them out of their shells to then also be posting on their personals more too.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just literally like, like it, if you're in the home run derby and, there's all the kids in the outfield collecting the balls that don't get hit over the fence. Like every social media post is just a swing of the at bat. And it's like, if you're putting out 100 times more balls onto the outfield than all of your competitors, by default, we get noticed more. And that was the strategy from jump. We didn't have a lot of money. We put $250 in marketing into every song that we dropped, and that's it.
And I think the same kind of goes for songs as well. Like just keep releasing songs. If you put out it's just simple math. The more songs that you put out, the more
The
likely.
more chance for discovery.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so it's like, okay, this one sucked. Okay, move on to the next one. All right, this one did better. This one, it's like it's all just. I don't know, man. I know that like I say to myself, like, when am I gonna be able to like not view this stuff? Like, when are people just gonna be like, yeah, okay, like I'm gonna stop being stupid now? Because like I just see people release full albums like on like a Taylor Swift drop. It's like, guys, you have
You're
10
not Taylor
listeners.
Swift.
Yeah. You have 10 monthly listeners on Spotify. You can't just release an album on this coming. I mean, like, it's just so I just like I'm like, how do you how do you
Yeah,
not
kids and bands just want to play music and that's it, and that's great. There's just so much more to it than that, and
yeah.
it's just unfortunate that most of them don't get that or don't want to get it or just want, because then you get into the situation where then there's these kids and bands who then sign a record deal for
Oh,
nothing or next to nothing,
yeah.
and then get their manager and get their whole team and have all these people doing all these things for them. And it's like some of those people are necessary for sure, but like the more that you can do yourself,
The
like like don't you want to, like, why do you want to give all of your money away?
right.
Like
Yeah, and I
like
think
why, like as soon as you get like a really good support tour, all of a sudden everyone's got a TM and a driver and guitar techs and drum techs. And it's just like, if you can hold out on that stuff, like the longer you can hold out, the way more beneficial long term it's going to be.
right. So obviously, you co-own FeaturedX with Tuck, and I know that obviously his bandmate Ryan. This band is a great example. Ryan Kirby, I know he manages Hollow Front. Those
Yep.
guys waited. I mean, they waited up until like probably like the labels were just like, here's the checkbook, do what you must. You know what I mean? Because they waited a long time, and they were, Spotify, they were well north of 200,000 monthly listeners, and then they eventually signed to UNFD. So yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it's not about like, oh, like we're never, we got to get a record deal. Like obviously, like eventually, like yeah, I could see why you would want to eventually, but when you're just starting out, I don't. It's tough. But
I'm
go
in the
ahead.
mind I'm in the mindset, and potentially a band that I work with might sign to a label again. You can never say never.
Right.
I don't see a need for one anymore.
Do you have like a kind of like a caveat to that, or you just like in general, like I don't see a need for it no matter what.
Well, and I obviously haven't worked with every single label under the sun because there's a million of them. They all operate differently. But just with the experiences that I've had with them and just knowing what they did and how they did it and just how they operated, it's just like, I, I can do a better job than that on my own.
Right.
Because it's like, sworn in the death card, I was basically the product manager for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the guy who signed us to the label let me do, like, have total control. So
Really.
I basically did that. And he had to put his foot down and say no a couple times for some ridiculous ideas that I had, or, like there wasn't an infinite budget. It was like, this is what we have. What do you want to
Right.
do with it? You know what I
Right.
mean? Um, but yeah, he let me be super involved, and that experience was great. But then every other situation, it hasn't been like that, and
Mm.
it's just like, okay, you know, they're a bank with connections is all that they are.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that the other thing that I've realized, it's like people get romanticized about, oh, Rise Records or this Ferret Records back in the day, or Trustkill Records, you know what I mean, or whatever label it is that they romanticize about, and they don't realize that you're not signing to that logo and that entity, or you are, but like it's the people that are the human beings that are underpaid and not professionals.
Right.
Like the people, like the marketing people who work at a lot of, in music, are just, they're not like the top of the marketing class from the best. You know what I mean? Like they're
Right.
not getting paid like they would in tech or corporate.
Right.
So the music industry is more so people who are super fans of music who are willing to work way more hours for a lot less money than anybody else. And it's just like, so it's like they can't just flip a switch and make you huge. Like they only do what they do and that's it. And it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, I think that with my background in marketing and strategy, as long as I have the resources to the money that we need to do the ideas that I want to do, we don't, like, I don't know, we've done everything
Right.
so far, just starting with like a few $100 and then flipping it from month to month. And now we're at the point where, they make $2,000 a month from their online revenue.
Yeah.
And so I have a $2,000 a month budget of, okay, this is what we're
Yeah.
doing with this. And so now you know what I mean? And now I can forecast based on especially on the last like 4 to 6 months of, okay, but this is really consistent at 2 grand a month right now. So like knowing that that's our new base and knowing that it's just going to grow from there, knowing where I think that they're going to be in a year from now, I'm like, we're going to be making 10 grand a month.
Yeah. That would be fantastic.
I can't tell you how many people I know who signed record deals for 20 grand or less, mostly less, who their catalogs make 10 to 20 grand a month and they don't see any of it because they don't own their masters.
Yeah. Like it's kind of like what we were talking about with bands treating songs, record labels in a way. And from my, again, I'm definitely not an expert like at all. Like I just, I'm just a guy who started a band a few years ago, and I just really try to learn. Like I'm talking to people like you. I try to really
Yeah.
talk to people who know what they are talking about, as opposed to some of the local jackasses around here who don't know a damn thing. But record labels, they treat bands like bands should treat songs. Okay, we're going to sign 10 bands. If 2 stick, great. Like that's what they're hoping for. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've been telling this story a lot recently, but I remember getting, so the death card was sworn in. We recorded that ourselves. We recorded it, mixed it, mastered it, and did everything
You
ourselves.
mixed them. Oh, wow. Okay.
We did it. We did it all ourselves, and me and Tyler created all of the branding, and then I created all of the marketing concepts, and I pitched the entire idea to. It wasn't just here's some
Yeah.
songs.
I
It's
remember you were telling me about this.
here's a finished album. Here's what we want to do art wise and style wise, branding wise. Here's why we want to do marketing. This is how we want to approach this, and did the whole thing. And I remember getting, we ended up signing the Razor and Tie. And I remember getting the first contract over. And it was the first time really seeing like a real record label contract
Hmm.
and being mind blown and baffled that there wasn't a marketing budget in the deal.
Really
Yeah. And that's when I learned that that is figured out after you sign.
interesting.
Right? Mind boggling, still to this day.
That doesn't
So
make
it
any
was just
sense at all. Okay. All
made
right.
no sense as someone who came from a marketing space and who had been promoting shows for 20 years. I'm just like that's the most important thing to me. Like, and that I don't get to, I have, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just like, and then, there were some things that we were forced to spend marketing on that I didn't want to spend marketing on that was very expensive. And it was, well, we have deals in place with these magazines, so we have to run ads. Like labels started buying 1 to 5 year blocks of ads in alt press so that they were paying the cheapest page rate as possible. So they were buying futures.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they forced you to spend to be like, okay, this is $4,000 of your marketing budget going to this one magazine ad. And I'm just like, no one reads that. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, when was the last time I saw an all press magazine? I have no idea. Um,
Yeah, it's just like, oh, well, label Y has deal Z with this magazine, so you have to,
yeah,
this is cornered out, and it's just like, well, everyone's online, like, and this is 7 years ago when I'm dealing with the first go around when I was managing bands, but still back then I was just like, no, like, and and it's interesting because now I'm kind of having like a thought of a conversation I was having earlier today with someone
yeah,
where it's really like cu- culture moves so fast nowadays, pop culture and music
right.
and everything, and so many of the issue is that in music in our scene especially, every company tries to like every label tries to sign 50 bands with 4 employees. You know what I mean? Like everyone is trying to do more with less because that's how they see fit making money. And so then the people who control a lot of these things get old quick. And it's, the next thing you know, they don't know what's cool on the ground level and what's
They're in their
bubbling
bubble.
up.
They're in their bubble. Yeah.
Right. And then that becomes a detriment to the entire scene. You know what I mean? Like, if you think about 10 years ago, and I call it the Rise Records core, kind of metalcore, you know what I mean? Like, it really got to a point when it became a huge lucrative thing that the people who controlled it really became gatekeepers and didn't let anyone new in.
Right.
And then what kind of happened is, those it's a young demographic. Those kids start to grow up and go to college and get into EDM or hard rock or whatever the fuck they get into. And it's like, if you're not cultivating the 13 to 18-year-olds and the next generation of both bands and then their fans, look what happened. So many of those bands literally was like overnight fell off.
Yeah.
From doing 1,500 tickets to 400 tickets in a matter of a year. And that's just what happens. And it's just like, you have to keep cultivating that new stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, man, I enjoy a good video game as much as the next guy, but you know what? Put down the goddamn Xbox controller and learn Facebook ads. Just do it. I mean,
Bro, yeah, like so many people will be like, I boosted our post and it didn't do anything.
I have
Facebook
a,
ads are bullshit. And I'm just like, okay, well, you need to go into the business manager, into the ads manager where you have actual control of things
right.
and do it from there. And it's crazy the results that you can get. Because,
Yeah.
my whole, so many, I feel like everybody pretty much is in the boat of Spotify monthly listeners and playlisting. And that's the game that everyone is in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the game of engaging and social media, and we do most of our work on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the places where you can actually communicate and engage back with the kids.
Right.
uh, because the more engaging and the more interaction that you have on those platforms, it might take a little bit longer, but they will eventually go and seek you out on their platform of choice, whether it's Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or whatever. So by concentrating on just the locations where there's actual communication and promotion availability, we've been able to grow all of our entertainment channels equally
Right.
and at the same time. So it's like, it's not just we have 58,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. It's also our music videos are getting 500,000 plays. Also, our Apple Music is doing half as much as Spotify. It's
Which is
also that,
impressive.
you know what I mean? So like that's like, so it's like, because we're concentrating on just those places, we're getting the results that we want, which is then leading to our now $2,000 a month budget, where it's like they have a full-time social media manager now. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
good. That's cool. Wow.
yeah, she's
Yeah.
my assistant. She's my assistant too. So, but she does social media management too. So like, yeah. So like now we have her doing that. So now it's like, okay, we're going. So it's like I am going to, and this is just the flipping mentality of,
Yeah.
being a hustler or whatever. But it's like, okay, cool. This is our new base. So it's like, okay, what are the things that we need? What are the things that a record label would potentially do for you, right? Like, or what are the positions at a record label that would be important? So someone with on like the social media side, somebody like a graphic designer, potentially a
Right.
video editor, a publicist, someone for whatever it is. And I'm like, we are just going to through flipping. I'm basically going to create their own label, their own staff that they have on retainer.
Mhm.
So we're going to get to a point where we have our publicist, we have our social media manager, we have a product manager, we have a graphic designer, we have a video editor, if we need somebody to pitch us the playlists or whatever, we have that, and we
Right.
just have it all ourselves, so that eventually, because like I said, I feel like by the end of next year we'll be making more than enough money to have that on staff completely. So
Right.
then it's just a record label for one. And then in 10 years from now, or let's say in 20 years from now, they decide to retire, right? Let's say they become as big as Emir or Chelsea Grin. Let's just say that they just
You're the
become
best
that big,
band in the
okay?
world. Yeah.
So in 20 years from now, with how we're approaching releasing music, if they're at maybe, let's say they get to 1 million monthly listeners, like if their catalog is as big as I think is it that it's gonna be, because we own our masters, they could retire, put all those people now don't have jobs, but then they could turn around and sell their catalog for 10 to 12x of what it made the previous year.
Yeah. That's
So like literally right now, I could sell a year of suffering for $150,000.
wow. That's a
That's it.
200 IQ thought process you have there, Jeff.
Well, thank you. I think
Uh,
my IQ might be bigger than that, but just kidding. Well, maybe, but well, no, because here, there's people with bands are all bands and artists know is, oh, we made vinyl, oh, we made cassettes, oh, we made CDs, and that, you know what I mean, like this
right.
reoccurring streaming business model, which is brand new. You know what I
Right.
mean? No one knows how to attack it from a strategy point of view, but it's like there are when there are people on Wall Street and at hedge fund companies,
Right.
those are the people. If you've seen like news articles recently about Bob Dylan selling his catalog or Lil Wayne selling his catalog, there's people on Wall Street who are the ones buying it because they're seeing how it's reoccurring income and how it's a investment opportunity.
Yeah. That's
So they're paying 10 to 12x the previous year's master earnings for catalogs right now.
wow.
So I have friends who, they're not the biggest band in the world, but 1 to 2 million monthly listeners, probably do 1,000 people a night at shows. You know what I mean? Like not the biggest band in the world. They definitely just sold their catalog for like $4 million.
That's insane. Yeah, see that is something that I never even entered my thought process. So
So
that
instead, because literally when you're signing to a label, they're basically giving you money in an investment in future art, right? They're negotiating for future art based on your current status and talent value based on what they think.
right.
In this new reality, an artist puts out and builds a catalog over X amount of period of time. Then when they want a bigger return or if they need something, you can just build it up for 5 years if you want. But it's like, hey, if this next year we made $10,000 a month, we made $120,000 off of 2 releases. That's worth 1.2 million currently in
Right.
today's standards, which no one knows basically that this is going on. But
Yeah, that is
yeah,
wow. Yeah, that is definitely something that never entered
but
my
I'm
thought.
sorry,
But
like
no, that's cool.
getting getting paid every month for streams. I see everyone on the internet every day complaining about it, and to me, I'm like, this is so much better for artists, and they just don't get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jeff, they have upwards of 35 monthly listeners. They just can't figure out why they're not making any stream money. I mean, they just cannot.
Right? We're like, well, if we sold all 35 of those people a CD every month, shouldn't we be making $350 a month? And it's,
Those
yeah,
people are not
whatever.
going to buy a goddamn CD. I can tell you that right now, especially with a lot of these production values. Nobody's going to buy that. But
Yeah, well, I just kind of have the mindset of looking at life like a Nintendo RPG game.
right,
Where like I remember, playing like very early on like Dragon Warrior or different games, and I've always been kind of smart in being able to problem solve, and I've always been making money in very interesting ways since I was a kid. And I just, in those games, just to break it down to its simplest point, it's like, okay, you enter a room or a map and you have to explore the map. And based on the things that you find or do or other characters you talk to, you get clues that are either there to help or hurt you. And you have to decipher them and use
Right.
what's in front of you to then leverage to move on in the level or to the next map or whatever. And
Right.
it's like, you just have to do that in real life. Like, what is in front of you? And then how do you get the most out of it? Where it's just like everyone has friends who are, who have skills in different ways. And it's like, it's wild to me that more people don't go about like trying to collab with them on things. Like, I just, for example, all the time I see kids who just do stupid little doodles on social media,
Right.
and I'll fucking DM them and be like, "Hey, would you do doodles of the guys in Left to Suffer? How much would you want for that?" And they're like, "What? You want to pay me for that? Like, what? Okay, whatever. Like, I'll do it for $20." It's like, cool. Here's $20 for you. Good karma, get some money into creators' hands, but then we just have unique, cheap piece of content that no one else is going to have.
Right.
And it's just like, so literally, like, I tell, like, one of the things I try and remember to tell bands is like, who is following you on Instagram and Facebook? Like, why don't you why don't you take it however long it takes and go through all of your band's Instagram followers and just see who the fuck they are? You know what I mean? Like, what if one of them's a manager of a cool
Right.
record store in Wisconsin? Or what if one of them does this? What if one of them makes weightlifting videos and they have 10,000 followers? Like, fuck, like, you discover who these people who are already your following you and are already your fan and be like, oh, cool. You make videos working out. Like, what? Here's our next, you want a sneak clip of our new single? Why don't you use the breakdown in a video? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. And
Right.
yeah. And so like Spotify is the same way. It's like, this is the infrastructure that's in front of you. Figure, like you said with the ads manager, like, that is like the most insane tool to ever exist in humanity, period. And if people just sat down and learned really how to use it, or just were willing to pay people to promote for them, it's like such a game changer, man. Like,
Yeah.
game changer. It's like everyone basically on the planet is at your fingertips, where that you can do whatever you want and sell them whatever you want, and you just have to figure out how to get to them. And I'm just like, I really don't have empathy for bands who complain, because I'm old enough to have booked my first shows pre-internet, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
remember pre-social media. And it's just like, as far as I'm concerned, the best and most talented bands and friends that I ever had didn't even have the chance that everyone is born with these days. So stop
Yeah.
complaining and just figure out how to use the tools that are in front of you.
Right.
Because, bro, it's like, if you wanted to, it's like, man, if you just wanted to make a living opening up baseball cards on YouTube, you can figure out a way of doing that now.
Liz, we we literally watch metalcore band music videos and react to them, and there's a market for. I mean, it's like still like the most mystifying thing, but like, yeah, it's
No,
about
I know why that there's a market for that.
what do you think?
And it's the same reason why Twitch is so successful. It has the same psychological thing to it, where it's like, because everything to me boils down to cavemen around a fire telling stories.
Yep.
That's what everything is all about. And like, stuff like Twitch or reaction videos puts the end user in a virtual, we're in your living room hanging out
Right.
situation, right? Where you're just kicking it with whoever, and you've got like a handful of friends over, and there's that hangout vibe. And maybe you're drinking, maybe you're smoking weed, maybe you're just playing video games, maybe you're doing whatever, and you're just fucking around and just goofing off and being a kid, right?
Right.
And like, this puts those people like in that thing where it's like, I remember I would be young enough where I would go over to my friend's house. We would take turns playing a video game, like a one person game, and we would watch each other play like in real life. And like all that Twitch is that. Like
Right.
it's just you're just there with them being like, oh watch out, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like or
Right.
whatever the fuck. And it's just like it's just creating that. And the reaction video is the same thing where it's like everyone wants social currency of being the person to tell the people about a band. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then if you can watch the person's reaction to discovering a band for the first time, it just creates that connection of, oh, I'm
Exactly.
showing you at your computer with you. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
just doing things like that and just bringing it down to a human connection level is what it's all about. Everyone is fucking lonely and they just want more everyone wants more human connection.
You're right.
So if you engage for every action, there's an equal to greater reaction. And
Exactly.
it might take time to hit the end point of where the rubber band is in the universe for it to send it back to you, right? It's not going to be instant karma type thing, but that is reality. Like that is just what it is. So by putting out more songs, by putting out more social media, by engaging more, you will get more in return. Like the bands who I'll talk to a local band after they just got off stage and then, oh, how do you guys think you did? Oh, we would have moved around a lot more, but the crowd wasn't really energized and we couldn't feed off of them. And I'm like,
Well,
that's not how it works,
yeah.
bro.
I think it's
Like
the other way
they
around.
this is the entertainment business.
Yeah.
You need to get them going. And it's like when you have action, you will get reaction
Right.
back. But you
Right.
have to have the nerve to put yourself out there and just do it.
Yeah, I mean, and what I think is really cool about it too is that a lot of YouTube content in general is like the negativity is what really sells, but with reactions, people want you to love their band with them. So like they're gonna go like they're gonna search like for example, Left to Suffer, Loathe reaction. They're going to watch that hoping that you love that song as much as they do, and that from there
Right.
just goes and goes and goes. And like what you were saying about people complaining and whatnot. My this is my favorite saying in the world. I say all the time, you know what, man? The world is fucked up, but what's chapter two? It's like just shut up and
Yeah.
stop complaining. Just this is the game, like you said. This is an open world. This is an MMORPG.
Yep.
You gotta navigate it.
And it's an open world of literal endless abundance.
Yeah, yeah,
And people don't understand that either. I have this whole concept where I think that we are like as we see fish in the ocean, like a higher dimensional creature would see us
right,
swimming in what we're swimming in, which is knowledge and information and ideas, and everything is out there.
right.
And we're in it, but we're in it so we don't know that we're in it. You know what I mean? It's like a
Exactly.
fish doesn't know that it's wet in water or whatever. And we're in dark matter and whatever that is in the atmosphere, and it's kind of the same thing. And yeah, it's all out there. You just have to literally you can, because that's why Left to Suffer thinks that I'm the devil, is because at that first meeting I was like, this is what we're gonna do, this is what's gonna happen,
They made a deal with
then
the devil.
this,
Yeah,
and like and it just all happened. And it's like not because I'm some mystical manifester
right.
or anything like that. It's just I've figured out how to parlay one thing into another and how to shift reality to so then the end result is there.
Yeah, yeah, man. I think just the easiest thing you can do is just engage with people, and then that from there is just a very organic uh relationship. And then, like you were saying about collaborating, and this ties into FeaturedX now. My thing that I've always been interested in, and I wish more bands would do this. You know how like when you put like a feature on a song, like it'll be like, for example, featuring Taylor Barber. Okay, that's fine, but what if you did featuring Left to Suffer? Because then it goes on. I want to
Well,
get your
that
I wanna get
become
your
that and
stance.
that becomes complicated because
Yeah,
it's
I wanted to
technically
ask you about
not
that.
featuring Left to Suffer.
It's not right.
Because then in order to do that, and this is something that just came up today actually with a customer of ours who is trying to list their song as featuring band name instead of
Incorrect. Oh,
featuring the
yeah, I
artist
wanted to talk
name.
to you about
and
this.
c and CD Baby, who is who they use for their distribution, hit them back up and was like, hey, so you need to get we need written approval for this, because that's, you know what I mean, like when it's
Interesting.
listed like that, it's like a collab between two artists
Right.
or two bands. So yeah, I understand that completely, but yeah, it just seems like that's going to be an issue because it's technically not featuring the whole band, and if it
Right.
was that, there might need to be some sort of royalty split then or
Right.
something. But it's something that, yeah, we're definitely working on and figuring out. But it's
I
definitely
think
interesting.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Again, the hip hop, they do features. It's like
Because it's the
when they
person.
first come
Yeah.
out, they're doing features as much as they can on every song, and they're understanding that it's all of them using each other to climb on each other's shoulders, like Barrel of Monkeys style.
Right.
And yeah, and they understand the leveraging of name power and brand recognition, and they just
Right.
get that more, and bands don't understand. Like when I remember when we launched the company, and there was most people thought it was the sickest thing they ever seen, but there was definitely a few people that were like, why the fuck would you pay someone for a feature, especially like
Right.
$500 or $1,000? And it's like, man, if you knew how to extract the value from that name and brand recognition, it's worth way more than that.
Yeah, so that was another thing I was going to ask you about too is making them, because a lot of people just look at, like, they'll go on to FeaturedX, and I think I won't say the person's name because they're no longer on your platform, but they were charging
Yep.
$4,000. They were
Yep.
charging $4,000, and people look at that and they're like, that's crazy. Who the hell would pay for that? So, like, how,
Right.
from your point of view, I know that you obviously, you co-own FeaturedX with Ryan Tuck for Fit for a King.
Yep.
How would you say is the best way to, other than having the other person obviously share it on their social media, blah 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 blah, like really extract value out of paying that money and getting that value out of a feature, rather than just here's the feature, see you later.
Well, realistically, that it's very easy. You if you can create content and Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter ads. I mean, you can make a Twitter ad that is just targeted. It's like, okay, if you have Taylor Barber from, well, let's use a bigger band, but you got the Tom Barber from Chelsea Grin featuring
Right.
on your song.
Right.
It's like in either Facebook Manager or Twitter Ads Manager, it's like you could make an ad that's targeted to just the people who follow Chelsea Grin, or
Right.
you can make an ad on Twitter to just the people who use the hashtag Chelsea Grin. You know what I mean? So it's just like that. I mean, it's literally that easy. You know what I mean? Or it's like when tours come back, it's like when Chelsea Green comes to town or when they're in
Right.
your area, go to all those shows with fucking flyers. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like if you know that they like uh band X, like go it's just literally like, where are the kids who might be into what you're promoting, and go there.
Yeah.
So it's like if you have to find them on Facebook, if you have to go on TikTok, like
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like that's where all the young kids are.
That's
So I
where they
told Left
are.
to Suffer, that's where we're going, baby. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how much that has helped. It's been insane. Can you give me 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
All right,
We got
just
dogs
getting.
barking, cats meowing. It's a freaking zoo up in here.
Yeah, I don't even know what time it is. Oh, it's 7:30. Yeah, okay.
7:30. Yeah, I'll get you out of here shortly. I didn't mean to take. I really. You were like, see, like I can interview.
I go on rants. It's cool.
No, it's fine because, like, see, I can interview, like, a band member or something like that. But the conversations I really like having are with people like you, because I learn stuff, and I think I just think that's very important. And I don't know, man. People just they think they want to be a jack of all trades, a master of none. That's what ends up.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just say all the time, like I've tried to talk to bands about doing some social media stuff for them because I do it for us. And again, we're not a huge band, so but they're like, oh well, what can we expect for results? And I'm like, I don't know. I I mean, I can't get
Yeah.
if you
The
can
whole
guarantee something, it's a scam. I mean,
the whole uh, and this is just a larger mentality issue of artists, because that, you're in a band, you're making music, you're an artist, right?
right,
Artists, people in 2020 wanting instant everything or guarantee this for art is crazy to me. So like I don't know, like bands who think because they are in a band and because they play music together that they deserve X, Y, and Z. Like, you know what I mean? And
right,
it's just like that isn't how entertainment works. Like from movies to music to sports, you are paid relative to the value that you bring.
right,
And
right,
that's how it works, which is always why, and this might be just the promoter in me, but it's always been weird to me that bands were never fan of door deals, because it's like if everyone's doing what they're doing and the door deal is, like 70% of the door or whatever, like you're literally getting paid based on who you bring out, like based on your value. And so
right.
how is that a bad thing? Like, yeah, but agents like to pit promoters against each other to run
To jack the price.
run run up the guarantees. Yeah, well, it's like when you're a promoter, it's basically like you're a roofer. You know what I mean? Like somebody needs a new roof on their house, they hit up 4 or 5 roofing companies, get different quotes, and then they
Yeah,
make a decision based off of that. It's the same thing, except you have to offer the most amount of money.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
or call their bluff if they're bluffing.
correct. Which is
Yeah,
always fun.
yeah. No, man. I think that FeaturedX is it's one of those ideas, man. That when I first heard about it coming out, I was like, duh. Like, how did
Why hasn't anybody else done this?
because it's like I've DM'd like you could other bands you DM people and then you hope for a response on Instagram or something like that or face, and then now there's just like this hub for it that makes it so easy. I think it's cool. I don't know, man. It's just one of those ideas that when I saw it, I was like, yeah, like, and now I'm part of it. By the way, thank you very much.
We want, our end goals with the site long term are to, one, bring together our entire community
Yeah,
and kind of have our community of the music industry be open sourced, where everyone who's involved, from artists to photographers, graphic designers, music video producers, copywriters, anything that you can think of, they're all going to be on there, and everyone will have access to work with everybody. And then realistically, the other thing is I want especially to really show bands in our scene how to make money rather than just being tour road dogs. You know what I mean? Like
right. You get burnt out.
everyone in our scene just gets told from a young age that you're never going to make money off of your music, so don't have any expectation to. You have to just tour and sell merch, and that's it, and that's how you make money, but you can do it. And it's like, man, there's so many other ways to make money. And
Yeah.
so it's going to be a slow process. We still got some bugs to work out, but I
Oh, no,
think
man.
this next year is going to be sick.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. You're gonna have a hub of all these different, like, because you could just for example, I can be like, oh, you know what, man? Like, I think I want. Let's put together a hoodie design. Okay, well, I can go to FeaturedX and there'll be a graphic design. I can look through their portfolios here, this, that, and the other thing, and then you can pick from there
Yep.
and send. That's
Well,
just yeah,
kind of the way, the again, just to correlate FeaturedX with the Left to Suffer stuff. It's
yeah,
like, so with them, like we want the ability to have like our own internal label, right? Our own team, so that we can keep the masters and all that stuff. And it's like, so it's like I wanted to create a place where it's like, okay, you're getting ready for an EP release. You can go to one website and you can
yeah.
find, a feature. You can find someone to do. You can just build out your team. Look at their styles and pick people whose styles mix together well. You get your photographer, your videographer, your graphic designer, your features, everything else that we'll have on there, and you can just put together your release team all in one spot.
Yeah, I just I love it, man. And then I know that you were talking to me about I don't know if I'm allowed to bring it up, but people like me, I'll put it that way.
YouTube reactors,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I just didn't know what you wanted me to bring up. So
Everyone who is, a gear in the machine of our scene, we want them all on there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you might not think that YouTube reactors are anything special, and that's funny since you are one, but it's like, to me, I see the value,
I understand
and I
the
know that
value,
it's huge, and I think it might be corny and funny to some, but I'm like, no, I think it's important to have it on there.
yeah. I appreciate. I mean, I understand the value of it, but I try to be. I try not to be like worth very important people or anything like that. But I think it really is pretty important because eventually you build in like a core of listeners who are going to trust your opinion on certain songs, and they're going to check them out. Like I could put in a title, you must listen to this, and that gets more views on that reaction, and then they discover a band just because of that. So it is
Yep.
a very powerful tool. But
You're a part of the media, basically. You know what I mean? Like, but well, when radio was the big thing, everyone who was on radio had a lot of power. And then when TV came along, it shifted to that, and radio started to die. And now the internet, and there's just, way less gatekeepers, and you can make your own thing and become a part of it.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll let you get out of there on that. I just think
Love it.
I think what you're doing is great. I was really glad to be able to sit down and talk to you about all this stuff because it's nice to know that there was some like-minded individuals in the respect that, just keep putting stuff out there so people never forget who the hell you are, essentially. And
people's attention spans are smaller than goldfish now. So
yeah. Well, guys, listen, make sure. Listen, I'm going to give my official endorsement from TrueShot from me. You got to check out Left to Suffer. You got to check out the Gloom in the Corner, which I know we didn't get to touch on the Gloom in the Corner that much, but those guys.
We'll do another one.
Yeah. And then also go to FeaturedX as well, where you can get me for a feature, but you can also get people like the likes of Tom Barber or there's so many people over there. I'd love to get Frankie Palmieri on there, but
we've been talking to him.
Have you? Yeah. He seems like the type of guy who's kind of low key in that regard, but I hope that you can reel him in.
Yeah, we think so. There are a lot of people who are low key like him, but we think that there's some ways of having them involved, maybe not like as a permanent fixture, but like as like a
promotional
week like a promotion thing, especially if we tie it into their like a new album that they're dropping and tie it, you know what I mean, and make it a part of a larger marketing strategy. So
it'd be like Undertaker when he did Cameo for a week or whatever.
Bingo.
Jeff Menig, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the TrueShot Guest Spot. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you. Not many people make it all the way through, I don't think. I hope that they do, but who knows. But if you did make it this far, I really, really appreciate it. And if you want to help support this show, you can head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/TrueShotOfficial, or just share this podcast somewhere. Share it with your grandma. Put a review on Apple Podcasts. Share the Spotify version. Comment down below if you're watching the video version on YouTube. Either way, anything you can do to get this podcast out there, we really appreciate it. So that way it grows and we can get some really cool guests, some more cool guests in the future. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, and listen to Mirage. Bye-bye.